Good morning, folks. This is Terry Trueblood, Chair of Trustees for the Illinois FOP, back again with another Facts Matters moment. And we have with us today a national FOP officer, the National Sergeant at Arms, Keith Turney, also comes from Illinois and can give us a national perspective on a lot of these things that are going on around the United States. So, Keith, thanks for being with us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, here in Illinois, as you know, we've had this, what we call House Bill 3653, and it covers a whole wide range of things, including, new training standards, how to use, cameras, as well as potentially, we got upcoming May 1st, losing qualified immunity, kind of like Colorado. So, most of the folks watching probably from Illinois, but could be from anywhere. So do you want to summarize any of that and some of the problems we're seeing, and then maybe how it relates to the rest of the United States?
Well, the Illinois FOP has been instrumental in getting this message out on House Bill 3653. So I think what is important to the rest of the country, as well as Illinois, is that this is not an isolated incident here in Illinois. What the initiatives that we're seeing here in Illinois, we are seeing across the country. There is a concerted effort to depolice policing across this country.
Yeah, and when we do those kinds of things, I mean, obviously there's results that from a police perspective, we're concerned about community safety issues if you have less police and less equipment and less money.
Well, of course, and and here's the real dichotomy in all this. We have trained professionals of every rank, every creed, every color across this country who really understand the problems that we have in our country and in policing. And unfortunately, their voices are being shut out in every conversation when it comes to criminal justice reform. Just as it took place here in Illinois, it has taken place across the country.
Yeah, it seems like Colorado was one of the leading states, although I will say I just picked up an article that Georgia, their General Assembly passed legislation that you cannot defund police more than 5% unless you've got some kind of dramatic financial issue, which is a positive. And so Georgia takes the lead on that, it appears.
Yeah, and we're seeing other states do the same. Missouri is actually going to pass a police officer's Bill of Rights probably this year. So in some of these states, and I think most of them are more Republican than Democrat, we are seeing pushback on the criminal justice reform because these states really see the problems that are being put forward.
Yeah, I know in Illinois we have 102 counties. Of course, on national news, you always see the state listed as blue, and of the 102, Cook County is definitely blue, no doubt about it. But as you get downstate, it gets cherry red in a lot of places if you're talking politics. And I know that a lot of counties are now passing individual ordinances to address qualified immunity for fear of it going away after May 1st. I know we have a task force made up of everybody but one police representative, and they think it's going to go negatively towards the police. So counties are taking action so they don't lose their own members.
Well, we've always said that Illinois is really two states, and depending on where you live in the state is indicative of what type of services that you get from your political powers, as well as the type of law enforcement that gets delivered. So yes, up in the northern part of the state, we have a more a liberal bent to our politics, and we see a lot of negative actions against law enforcement. And when you get down in the southern part of the state, or in the central part of the state even, it's totally the opposite. So we have a very difficult state to do legislative work in.
Yeah, definitely. I do know, and I want our listeners to know that the FOP, the state FOP, as well as the national, is working diligently. They are not just sitting back on their haunches doing nothing. I know the guys are staying up late at night when the General Assembly was in. We had people staying up multiple days in a row and putting people on the ground, legislators talking with us, lobbyists, all kinds of folks that we have available to us. So for the average member, I wanted to know that, their elected officials are doing all we can do, but the numbers are the numbers, when it comes to General Assembly votes.
Well, what was interesting is that it was in the 11th hour on the passing of this bill, 3653. Many of us converged on Springfield and started working with the Attorney General's office because their interest was in doing certification for law enforcement, and they were willing to discuss the issues with us. So right up until till this bill got passed, we were in communication with the Attorney General's office to get legislation that made sense to law enforcement, and we got pretty close there. However, that bill got thrown in with the other bill on criminal justice reform, which just totally threw everything off kilter.
Yeah, and a lot of people need to understand we weren't involved in the thing that came out of it was the Black Caucus that pushed it forward. We knew that they were working on something through the late summer, fall, whatever, but we weren't invited to the table there at all. In fact, we were rejected, more than once.
And that was a real shame because like I said, we have good professional law enforcement leaders in the sheriff's offices, the Chiefs of Police Association, the FOP. We could have helped them craft legislation that would have made sense to our citizens here in Illinois. And instead, we got this bill that is just going to just devastate criminal justice in Illinois.
Well, of course, we had an internal poll done, and 99% of the officers that took the poll, they're all active working officers, said that they were either physically or financially threatened by this bill. And many of them are deciding to leave law enforcement or at least go out of state. And of those that are going out of state, about half of them are not going to stay in law enforcement. So this mass exodus is something that the chiefs and the sheriffs are, trying to address. And as you know, we've had chiefs from other states sending letters thanking the governor for pushing out quality, employees back into other states.
Well, our law enforcement personnel don't live in a vacuum. So they not only see what's going on here in Illinois, but they see what's going on across the country. And when, this first started in Colorado with qualified immunity. And if you talk to the FOP in Colorado, they'll tell you that officers are leaving in droves. I just read a report from Aurora, Colorado, where like 30%, they're like down 30% within the last year. And they've never had such a turnover like that. So, the proponents of criminal justice reform are saying that these incidents are just an anomaly. But, it's awful strange that, police departments that have a 3% and 4% turnover rate year in and year out are now seeing 20 and 30% of their personnel leaving their ranks. That says a lot. Whether they want to pay attention to those numbers or not, those facts are clear.
Absolutely. Is there any advice you would give a young person that is thinking about getting into law enforcement at this point?
My thoughts are very very troubling. This is a profession that I've dedicated 40 years of my life to see that it is done well. And I look at what's going on now across the country, and I don't know if I could legitimately recommend this job for a young person trying to start out in a career, because there's no future in it, at least the way it's been designed now. So, I'm thinking young people that are looking to get involved in the criminal justice system probably want to steer away from law enforcement, go into public service in other areas, or get a law degree, or go in another direction, because there doesn't seem to be much of a future here in law enforcement for young folks.
Yeah, I've told them the same thing, and I said, just wait this out. Let's see if we. Sometimes you have to let management fail, is an old adage. And if this goes through, there will be failures. In my opinion, I'll predict there will be deaths. I'll predict there will be disturbances. I predict there'll be shortages of law enforcement. And once the people feel that, they'll scream to their politicians, fix this. And, even back in the 1980s, they used to come and they made the job useful. They made the job with a decent pension. They tried to pay you reasonably to take people away from the private sector. And they did so successfully. Now it seems as though they're pushing away some of the best, most intelligent folks who have a passion for the job. And it really scares me a bit as a former academy trainer. Who are we getting in there? And then there's rules are telling you privately behind the scenes, don't flunk anybody out of an academy. Well, for those of us who are in professional law enforcement, that's the last thing we want to see. We want people thinned out before they ever hit the street, because the problems that the proponents of this kind of legislation are saying will just be exacerbated by people who don't have the education, the passion to do it correctly.
Well, and we've seen that in other areas of the country where the pay is low, you get a candidate into law enforcement that really isn't as qualified as they should be, and it just exasperates the problem, because now you have folks out there that well-meaning but can't grasp the profession, can't grasp the job, and they're making mistakes that a well-trained, qualified officer wouldn't make. And then, of course, that just makes matters worse for the community.
Absolutely. Well, as we get to wrap this particular podcast up, Keith, is there any final words you'd like to leave with the membership, both at the national level as well as the state level?
Well, one message that I'd like to deliver for those active officers that are still doing their job, I want to thank you very much for holding the line and staying the course, because I realize it's very, very difficult. I want to just let you all know that your state FOP, your national FOP are trying to work through these issues. And we have told anybody that is willing to listen to us, we are willing to sit down and discuss these matters on criminal justice reform in a logical manner. And our doors are always open, and we're always willing to sit down and talk.
Well, great. Thanks, Keith, for being here. And folks, this is another Facts Matters moment, and we'll be back with you next week for another show. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.